Welcome to The More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hi, I'm Kevin Kelton. I'm a TV writer and a lifetime Democrat living in Los Angeles, California.
Hi there, I'm DJ McGuire. I'm an economics instructor, a cost estimator, and a progressive conservative if I were in Canada. But since I'm in Suffolk, Virginia, I'm just a frustrated Democrat.
Hi, I'm Greg Matuzak, a liberal Democrat, a veteran of many hard-fought political campaigns. Sadly, most of them in Cincinnati, Ohio, losing.
That sounded like the opposite of Charlie Sheen, who goes winning. You ended yours with losing.
Losing. Well, that's what happens when you're a liberal Democrat in Cincinnati, Ohio. In Cincinnati, you take what you can get.
And I'm Rebecca Kushmiter, and I am doing this on my own because I couldn't get Ivanka Trump to sit in for me tonight. I'm a liberal Democrat, and I am in Kensington, Maryland.
Maybe you could have your daughter just sit in for a little bit when you get taught when you need a nap or something.
Exactly.
How old is she?
She's 5, so her opinions on G20 economic affairs would be about as well formed as Donald Trump's. Maybe not quite.
Yeah,
as well
just
formed
about.
as
Yeah, so
yeah,
perfect.
She's right up there.
Right
her vocabulary is bigger.
The More Perfect Union can be found on iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Facebook, and at our website, themoreperfectunionpodcast.com, where we also occasionally post commentary and you can find host bios. So this week, Trump was at the G20 Summit in someplace other than the United States.
Hamburg,
yes. But he made news here in the good old US of A when he retweeted some video that somebody created with the CNN logo on the head of a person that Trump was wrestling back in the WWF days when he was helping the McMahons promote the WWF or something like that. And then people got all upset for like a million reasons. Greg, what the heck happened there?
So it wasn't so much CNN's reaction. CNN at first took it pretty much in stride, but in the middle of their investigation or their story, they found out the actual name of the person who made the original GIF or GIF, whatever you want to call it.
I think we're a GIF.
We're a
podcast
GIF,
here,
sure.
I think GIF.
That's how we roll. We're a GIF. We're a GIF.
Perfect Union. I reject GIF as a pronunciation.
So do I. So the statement that they put out was, but in addition to finding that, they found that this person had an entire backlog of just terrible comments, of statements on their Reddit page, some of them racist, a lot of trolls, some of them really terrible. And they found this person's real name. And it's not that hard to do if you know how to use a computer. And then they said, we know who this person is, but we're not printing their name because they've apologized, they've deleted their accounts, and they've promised they're not going to do this behavior in the future.
Well, he also the guy who did it also issued a lengthy statement apologizing and sort of issuing it as a correction to others who engage in that behavior. And he also is an adult. That's something worth mentioning because some people have assumed it was a teenager.
Yes. There was a rumor.
It is. Yeah. This person is above the age of majority.
Right. And then the last line in the CNN statement was they reserve the right to change their mind, that they could in the future print this person's name if something changes, if this person's behavior changes. And that's where it gets kind of murky. Some people saw this as a threat. Some people saw this as if the story changes, then they will change. And so what do you guys think about this? Is this a threat or is this how the news cycle works? The term is actually called doxing. If you threaten to expose a person's personal identity on the internet.
Well, no, that's doxing if I do it. It's doxing if one of you do it. Publishing public information is not doxing if CNN does it. That's their job.
Well, I guess if it's a story and if it's relevant.
Let's remember that the Trump administration has been they've had their hair on fire for 5 months because of unnamed sources. So if CNN has the name of the source of this video and they feel that there's a worthwhile reason to release it, I don't see what the problem is.
Well, that's not the issue. The issue is they've said we won't release it as long as this person doesn't do anything in the future.
Right. Yeah. They gave him a one-time pass.
But I mean, you know what? But the changes that could happen in the future, actually, there's a whole universe of things that could happen. It could be he starts trolling again, and CNN goes, you know what? We told you this would happen. It could also be that he could die in a fire while rescuing a kitten, and CNN could release his name in that story and say he was also the guy who created this gif, and this is how he's been atoning by rescuing kittens from burning buildings. May he rest in peace. So it doesn't have to be a threat. I don't know. I think it was inartful of CNN.
Right. I agree. It was inartful.
It had a menacing tone to it. I don't know that it was meant as a threat. It was poorly done.
I think DJ has a different spin on it. DJ, what do you think?
This is the reality is we all like to say we make decisions based on our knowledge. Sometimes we admit to ourselves we make our decisions based on our experience. The reality is we make our decisions based on the traumas we've gone through, which we've gone. This was very traumatic for CNN, and they essentially reacted like a trauma victim. They have put a sort of Damocles over this person's head, who's basically said, if you do anything of which we don't approve, we are going to release all of your information. That is a threat. That is intimidation. And the fact that they can try to hide it under, well, it was an artful, well, it could have been anything else. No. Just about everybody knows exactly what this means. This is CNN having power over somebody and essentially using it. I, frankly, would have appreciated them more as journalists if they actually had published his information and said, this is the guy's name. This is, we're not going to reveal other sorts of contact information because, that can be dangerous. But the notion that they withheld his name at his request and then essentially used it as leverage to get him to change his behavior, in particular his behavior specifically about CNN. I'm sorry, but if somebody with an Italian last name who was not affiliated with a news organization did it, they would be arrested for that.
Okay, one. I don't know how I feel about that being of Italian descent, but go on.
But hold on, DJ. You just said if they were not part of a news organization. That's a big if. That's a big but. CNN is a news organization. It is their job to publish information.
No, they didn't do their job. They used it as leverage to get what they want.
No.
That's what they did. That is exactly what they did. No, had they published his name, I would have said, yes, they acted like a news organization.
He asked them not to, and they gave him a pass, and they said, this is not a blanket pass. It's a one-time thing.
So let me ask you a question. So we've been talking in the past, and we've talked about this before, like people whose entire lives have been destroyed by making one mistake. Helena mentioned this, the young lady who tweeted on when she was going to Africa, she made a rather foul and terrible joke about AIDS in Africa. And we talked about that a couple episodes ago, and her life was ruined. And we see this again and again about these internet one shot, and their lives are destroyed. They lose their jobs, they lose everything. And we all said it's not fun. It's scandalous and salacious for a moment. But let's say they did that to this person, or let's say they said, we're taking the higher road, we're not doing this. But then this person turns around and says, I think I'm going to make some money going to Hannity.
Exactly.
Well, and then all of a sudden CNN says, we've already said we're not talking about it. We have already said we're not printing his name. And now the story's out there. And then people said, well, we thought you weren't talking about it. Well, we reserve the right to now talk about it.
That's okay. No, that is, and this is the problem because CNN acted as a victim here instead of a journalistic organization. They were targeted by this tweet, that there is no doubt, and they reacted purely like a victim. And hey, it has not been easy being CNN. I don't want to necessarily make light of what they have gone through over the last 6 months. No. Just so we're clear here. But if they were acting in the interest of journalism, which they are supposed to do, and which they normally do, frankly, when he said no, don't release my name, they would have said, sorry, pal, this is news. You are not a source for information anywhere else. Your anonymity is not going to help break any future stories. We are going to bust your anonymity. We're going to put your name out there. We won't put out any other PII that could let people find you. That would be genuinely dangerous. But the idea that this person, asked to hide his name And CNN said, oh, well, yes, so long as you do XYZ and don't do PDQ. That essentially changed the nature of what CNN was doing.
They didn't say as long as you. They did not say
Yes,
as long
they
as you at all.
did.
You're making up facts. You're making up facts.
No, they didn't. No, the final statement was, we are not publishing his name. We reserve the right to do so if circumstances change.
Exactly.
That's really vague, and I see both sides. I do, but I still have to side with CNN that I think it's poorly worded. But I don't see this as coercion.
But, okay, well, here's the thing. He isn't the story, really. He's a guy who made a GIF.
Right.
Which is completely allowable. And he tweeted it out there, and the president retweeted it.
Right. Yeah, we're getting, like
the
usual.
The story is that
So
Donald
wouldn't
Trump
CNN publish
saw
his
this
name?
asshole GIF.
Why wouldn't CNN publish his name?
GIF.
Because it would ruin his life.
And that stopped journalists before?
What purpose would we ruin his life?
Yeah.
He's some guy on Reddit. He's not the president of the United States. He's a schmuck who made a
That's
GIF.
actually assuming his life would be ruined. This is America. We love apologies. We love giving people a second chance. If we actually knew the name of this guy after he basically fell on his face and begged for mercy, he would be just one of the long list of America's second chance stories. But because he asked not to reveal his name and CNN said, okay, and essentially put conditions on it, we are where we are, where nobody comes out of this with glory.
Okay, so here's I'm going to make one last point on this, and it's got about 3 different elements to it. Okay. One is, do you remember a few months ago, there was a story that the Washington Post broke that someone in the White House was being investigated for contacts with Russia. I'm forgetting the details of it, but they said a high senior government official was being investigated, and we are not publishing his name because it hadn't been confirmed yet. They had the information, but they hadn't confirmed it. It turned out to be Jared Kushner, but they withheld that name because they felt that, 1, there was no evidence that he had done wrong, and 2, that there was something about that information that they were still vetting.
That's apples and oranges, but go on.
To me, it's not. To me, it's a very similar thing. Journalists have the right to publish what they feel is in the public interest. This person asked CNN not to do it. I agree with you. I think when we start saying it would have ruined his life, I think that that's hyperbole. So I agree with you on that point, DJ. But to turn this into CNN did something unethical, I really just think is a stretch. And in the media environment that we're living in today, when the media is under attack, and by the way, I consider us the media too, so I'm a little bit on the defensive about this. With the media and the news media being under attack, I think stories like this where people pile onto CNN and start making up facts that were not in the press release and start sending out into the zeitgeist information that people are going to hear on this podcast and get the wrong impression, I think we are doing a disservice. And by the way, you know what the moral of the story is? Do not look a GIF horse in the mouth.
Very funny, Kev.
So now that we've spent 15 minutes arguing about a GIF, let's talk about the President of the United States and give him a couple of minutes.
Who's our own gift?
Wait, so when we're talking about the president, do we mean Donald or Ivanka?
And that is because at the G20 Summit this week, amongst other things that happened that were newsworthy, a lot of people were a little surprised that the President of the United States couldn't make every meeting. Usually when they can't make a meeting, they send a high-level representative who specializes in that area of foreign policy. Well, who did Donald Trump send to sit in for him? Ivanka Trump.
Yes. Now, granted, it wasn't for the entire day. At one point, he got up, he had to go to take another meeting, and he asked Ivanka to sit in for him while he took another meeting, and it wasn't like a full day, but it was for a little while. And the ambassador to Germany was sitting right there going, oh, well, I could have done this. I'm kind of in on a lot of this. But and I think he was kind of upset because he had tweeted that he didn't see this as kind of the right thing to do, but okay, he didn't get to sit at the big kids table. But
no, it's just a small violation of protocols at G20 summits. Totally normal for the Trump administration.
For the Trump administration, yeah. Well, you know why I think he does it? I think Trump thinks that the world is charmed by Ivanka. because this is not the first time she's turned up at international, meetings with the Chinese leader. DJ, you would probably remember other meetings. I know that there's been a few that she's been brought into.
There have been more than a few. I mean, look. The fact of the matter is, he has brought Tatiana Diachenko with him. She is very powerful in the administration. Oh wait, no, damn it, that was a different president who liked Vladimir Putin. That was Boris Yeltsin. Sorry, where were we again?
Here's my theory about the relationship between Donald and Ivanka. I think Donald can't hear. I think he's a 70-year-old guy with 70-year-old ears, and I think he won't wear hearing aids for whatever reason. Either they don't work very well for him, or he's too vain. And I think the reason he has Ivanka around is to cover when he hasn't heard something and can't give a coherent answer. She steps in, and I think she fills him in later. And I think that sitting in a room with the amount of simultaneous translation and background noise that would have been going on in a G20 Summit meeting was beyond his ability to decipher anything. And he had Ivanka fill in for him. I think she's essentially like a translator for him, or like a hearing ear dog, if such a thing exists. Not that I'm calling Ivanka a dog. But yeah, I think he can't hear. I think he's got age-related hearing loss.
In the meantime, there was some actual news that happened at the G20. One of them was an apparent ceasefire in Syria, the southwestern part of Syria, near the borders of Jordan and Israel.
Is that the part that Putin doesn't actually want?
It may very well be. I don't know whether it necessarily includes Damascus. It does include the area near the Golan Heights. So Jordan has had a role in this, and Israel has weighed in a little bit. The thing that struck me when I was reading the reports of the ceasefire, though, and this only came into effect today, was that it will be supervised by Russian military police. That's a big uh-oh for me. Russia is not a neutral arbiter here. They have a thumb on the scales for the Bashar Assad regime, and for them to have essentially control of the ceasefire border areas, the perimeter of the ceasefire, very much disturbs me greatly. I, for one, have a very much have a fear that they will use this to their advantage and to Bashar Assad's advantage against the people who genuinely want to free Syria, and the people we should be supporting but don't, because Donald Trump, one, is an idiot, and two, likes anything Vladimir Putin tells him. But I am unusual in this regard. I know that, so I will throw it out to the three of you. What are your thoughts on the Syrian ceasefire deal?
I think putting foxes in hen houses is generally a bad idea.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think it's one of those things. Like, I think it's great, but it's one of those. I will see. It's apparent, maybe. I just, like you said, we have so many.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything in writing? Do we understand what the parameters of this are? Is there a time frame, or are there contingencies?
Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything like that. I haven't seen it.
Of course not, because nobody was in that meeting except Vladimir Putin and Trump and
Rex
Tillerson.
But in defense of the Trump administration, it's not unusual that in high-level meetings, especially between heads of state like this, they speak in broad generalities, and then the details are ironed out later.
That's true, but this ceasefire has already started. It took effect noon local time. It's already in place. We should know the details of a ceasefire that is currently ongoing. That shouldn't be too hard.
Okay. I think the details are stop shooting. I think those two words are the most important details.
That would be ever so nice.
That's a pretty un-American sentiment. We shoot a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to make money when you're not shooting someone. It's that's a tough one.
Cynicism week on the More Perfect Union, folks, if you haven't noticed.
Speaking of cynicism, Rebecca used the term "the fox guarding the hen house," which leads us to what else happened in this summit meeting, which was the idea of discussing with Vladimir Putin how we can turn U.S. cybersecurity into a more fortress-like thing going into our future elections. As somebody said, discussing cybersecurity with Vladimir Putin is like putting an Ebola microbe in the meeting to discuss infectious disease prevention.
That was me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been coming up with all kinds of wonderful analogies. I've also been saying it's like Donald and Marla deciding, how Ivana would react to Donald having an affair.
Yeah, it's what did Lindsey Graham say this Senator Graham say this morning? It's
Oh, he said, yeah, this isn't the stupidest idea I've ever heard, but it's close.
yeah, it's not the stupidest idea, but it's close. Which, once again, I think if I had to have dinner with one senator, Senator Franken was probably up there, but Lindsey Graham's in my top 5 at this point because
he's pretty witty. He's pretty
witty, and his Southern genteel charm, I think, would be just so enjoyable.
He's also smart as hell. If you ever listen to Lindsey Graham talking about military policy and foreign policy in a serious venue, he's really smart. I remember listening to him on C-SPAN one time and thinking, my God, if this guy would use his powers for good, he's got a lot of really
could we
interesting...
say well-informed? Because to say smart would be to endorse his foreign policy, and I'd be surprised if you endorse his foreign policy.
Yeah, but I would. So I'll call it smart, and Rebecca can be off the hook on that one.
He's smart and also wrong.
I know that as the person who was most recently a Republican about 15 months ago or so, I would have.
I think you're the only one who ever was a Republican at all.
Yes, but I would probably be the one most likely to try to defend the Trump administration on something. But this isn't one of those things, so never mind. This is just. This not only is this bad, but the entire vibe of the Trump-Putin relationship, which really I think came into its own this weekend, is just terrible. There was essentially a political non-aggression pact which said if Vladimir Putin promises not to essentially do what he did in 2016, although Trump won't admit it, then we will promise not to help pro-democracy forces in Russia for as long as Trump is president. That's a disaster. That's a disaster for democratic forces within Russia, for folks who are trying to bring genuine democracy for Russia. It is the sort of detentist realpolitik nonsense that Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter used that got us into so much trouble in the 1970s. You've talked about the cybersecurity thing, so I won't get into that in more detail. But it's just the whole. We are now dealing with an administration that genuinely believes that Vladimir Putin is a model to follow instead of a lesson to avoid, and this is just more evidence of it, more troubling evidence of that.
Interesting.
It's really scary. But my favorite line was when he walks up to Putin at the beginning and said, "Nice to meet you." Like this is the first time they've ever met, and as if they haven't been like hanging out on Mar-a-Lago, which
basically pen pals.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Like they don't know each other, and they haven't.
So which is it? They do?
Oh, I believe that they've been like hanging out at the back of Miss Universe contests for like decades.
I mean, Putin definitely feels like he knows Donald after watching the P tape.
Like any good mob boss, Vladimir Putin puts layers and buffers between himself and the people that he has compromised or his assets. I actually think this probably is the first time that the two of them actually met, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
That's true.
That makes me laugh because I can't pronounce the name of the Russian foreign ambassador. Kislyak. That what you just said about Putin having a lot of buffers, that made me think of Kislyak like Willie Chi-Chi from The Godfather.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm a buffer.
That's right.
That's what I am. I'm a buffer.
Right. Looks like any other. Looks like the Putin organization, like any other good family. The family has a lot of buffers.
Yeah.
Did you guys, going back to the cybersecurity, did you hear Nikki Haley discuss her idea, her concept of what a Russian U.S. cybersecurity team would be like? And literally, she was saying we would show them where our problems would be, and they would then say, right, we won't attack here, or they would say they would show us how they did it last time. Except she didn't say like they did it. It's like they would show us our weaknesses and we would buff them up. And I was like, oh yeah. That's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's gonna happen.
That.
Well, yeah. Here's what I see as the problem, because I think that, again, and I've said this on past podcasts, that Robert Mueller's going to get to the bottom of this, and if there's something there, if there's fire, he will uncover it. But what concerns me is
your lips to God's ears. Go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and they do go to God's ears. My concern is that the Trump administration, look, they're not going to acknowledge that the Russians had a strong hand in the 2016 election. They simply don't want to admit it because it makes Trump look like maybe he wouldn't have won otherwise. And I understand that. Look, God bless him. He wants his presidency to be legitimate, or people to perceive it to be legitimate. But the real problem is if the United States as a country doesn't take a strong stand, they're going to practice what they did again in 2018, and they're going to practice what they did again in 2020. And they're going to also do it in the German elections, and they're going to do it in other foreign elections. And every time the Russians do this, just like anything else that you practice, what happens?
You get better
at it. That's right. They're going to continue to practice this and get better at it. And the next time around, it may not just be fake news coming out of Macedonia and a couple of probes of state election departments that actually didn't change any votes. The next time, they may actually do some real damage because they've weaponized what they're doing. So that's my big concern.
And, I mean, they've already infiltrated our electrical grid, our nuclear power facilities. 39 states, they were poking around in the voter data systems. This is not minor. It's not subtle, and it's not partisan. This is something that we should all be up in arms about. And it's very disheartening to me when I see people saying, well, you know what, Obama didn't fix it, and now Trump and Putin are at least going to try, because I think that really misses a big point.
Yeah, and this, by the way, predates Obama. This goes back to when they got Yakov Smirnoff in the Comedy Store.
Are we supposed to blame Polly Morrisbaum for stuff like that?
That's an old one. I don't know about that one.
That's a very Gen X kind of joke there.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of it. So there was something else in the news this week, and it brought in one of my favorite players from the Trump clan, Donald Jr., who apparently there's some confusion about a meeting that he was in. Rebecca, you were telling us about this before the show. What went down there?
Okay, forgive me, I've been doing really soccer mom kind of things all weekend. So like I've been seeing a headline here and a headline there in between picnics and meetings with Girl Scout leaders and things. So if I am making mistakes, they're unintentional. But at first there was this news story from the Times that Don Jr. had a meeting with some Kremlin-linked lawyer. And he'd invited Jared Kushner just to do a little drop by, just to kind of hang in. And Paul Manafort was there, and it was in Trump Tower, and it was during the campaign. And the first thing Don Jr. and Kushner said was like, oh, yeah, we did that. It was about Russian adoption programs that we kind of want to have reopened, and which doesn't ring true. Like if it had been Pence meeting about Russian adoptions, I think we all would have bought it. But Don Jr., not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
If he was looking for a mail order bride, I might have bought that.
Yeah, something tells me that in the heat of the presidential campaign, the Trump family and the Trump campaign didn't have Russian adoptions on their mind.
No, so now the statements come out that Don Jr. took the meeting because some music publicist that he knows who has some relationship with, I don't know, the Miss Universe, it's so weird. It's so Trumpy, shady, New York awfulness. So he took this meeting because the lawyer might have told him something that could help his father's campaign because it was damaging information about Hillary Clinton. And I feel like he's trying to blame Hillary Clinton for his meeting with Russian lawyers. He's like, no, it's not me. It's that Hillary had stuff and they were going to tell me.
Well, I mean, this is
so I had to do it. And I invited Jared because, he likes Russian lawyers.
But isn't that the standard issue? Is that not the standard issue response for the entire Trump era Republican Party now? I mean, if memory serves, this week Hillary Clinton actually went and did a standard criticism of what the Republicans were doing in their great healthcare car crash, and their response is, "Well, what's your plan?" It's if they are desperate to try to run against Hillary Clinton again and again and again and again. It's like it will always be November 8th, 2016 to these people. They don't want to move on.
Subject, verb, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Oh,
let me explain something to you. Hillary Clinton is Donald Trump's Margaritaville. It's his one hit. He's going to play it at every concert. Okay, he's going to close with it. That will never leave his set.
Oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. I'm going to use that over. I'm going to use. Not only am I going to use it, but I'm going to tell people I thought of that.
Done.
Oh my gosh.
Well done. And the thing is, if they're really going to use the cover that this is a bad adoption policy, they're hoping that nobody notices the reason why why adoption of Russian children sort of hit a wall, which is because Vladimir Putin stopped it after the Russian-sanctioned McGuinty Act was passed, which was designed to essentially financially penalize Russian human rights abusers. So even saying, this is just about adoptions, no, if it's about adoptions, then it's about the sanctions on Putin's friends because they were too busy slicing off pieces of the Ukraine, shooting down Dutch airplanes, and sentencing Chechen homosexuals to die in concentration camps. You can't escape these issues, no matter how hard they can't escape them, no matter how hard you try. None of you are looking to escape them. So, even the cover story has an odor to it.
Well, now they've dropped the cover story. It's like, okay, it wasn't actually about adoption. It was about Hillary.
Yeah.
And I know they weren't trying to adopt Hillary.
But the other thing that kind of bothers me is that this meeting was not on the Kushmeister's original list of meetings with Kremlin lawyers or with Russians. And every time we find a new meeting, he goes, "Oh yes, I forgot that one. I'll add another one." There have been, I don't even know how many times he's now added, "Oh wait, there was another meeting. Oh wait, we have another meeting." And this one was, I wasn't technically at this one. This was just a drop by. I was just dropping by someone.
Right.
Well, this is crazy. How many times do you meet with Kremlin lawyers or with Russian lawyers and you go, "Gosh, I have
literally never met with a Russian lawyer.
Right.
It's not a common thing.
Right.
By the way, how did this tie into the Miss Universe pageant in Russia? What was the connection there?
Oh, the
one of the
music
promoters
who asked Don, the music promoter who asked Don Jr. to take the meeting knew Russian people because he was involved in the Miss Universe. I mean, it's all this bizarre, incestuous stuff.
There's a reason I asked that, because here's my theory. Okay. There is a nexus to the entire Trump-Russian collusion story. All the separate, disparate elements, the different tentacles out there have one nexus, and it's that Miss Universe pageant in Russia. To me, and I'm going to make my second mafia reference or analogy of the show, it's like Las Vegas and the mafia. All bad things run through that Miss Universe pageant. And when it all comes out, we're going to find out that was like the din of iniquity where they were doing all the worst stuff in the world. plus hitting on 15-year-old girls.
Happened.
Yeah.
Yep, that's where the P-tape happened, and Putin paid for those hookers. And
that, by the way, you'll never convince me that story is not true. Not that anybody here is going to try.
I want that P-tape to be real. I don't actually
it is real.
I want it to be real.
It is real. I know enough about Donald Trump. It's real. And my favorite part of the story is this is why I believe it to be real, because when it first came out, they didn't say because he was into that or because they did it on him or anything like that. What the story that I heard was he hired these hookers to pee on the bed because it was the bed the Obamas had slept in. To me, that's the mark of a true story.
There's just enough truth in that
it just makes enough sense that you have to believe it.
And it's so stupid and petty.
Exactly. Mitch McConnell, speaking of P-tapes, Mitch McConnell.
Oh my God, no. Don't say P-tape and Mitch McConnell in the same sentence.
Well, yeah, unless you add non sequitur. I mean,
no, I was just making a joke. There is no connection that we know of with Mitch McConnell and urine. But Mitch McConnell did or is in the process of trying to still find a way to repeal or to pass the repeal of the Obamacare law in the Senate. And where do you guys think that is? I mean, I keep hearing that he's losing more and more senators, and yet I don't put it past him because like Michael Corleone, there's the hat trick. Like Michael Corleone.
Tonight's episode is sponsored by Francis Ford Coppola.
Yes.
Hey, The Godfather is a great series of movies. Let's be square.
And Coppola has a winery, right?
Yes.
Yes.
John
Get in
McCain,
that action.
Senator McCain actually just came out and said it's dead. It's over. This isn't happening. The way it is now, the concept of just repealing it, it's not happening. And granted, McCain is kind of on the outs with a lot of the GOP. So you can't just take his word, but I think a lot of those outside GOP senators are thinking, no, this isn't happening. And it's not going to happen this one. They all went home for the break. They heard from their constituents. And no one likes this. What was the 17% of Republicans were the only ones who really went for this? I mean, it's a terrible
And that's why McConnell is
bill.
actually talking
At
about.
this point, they've got several.
That's why, just briefly, Rebecca. That's why McConnell is now talking about what happens afterwards. He's saying, look, if this fails, we have to do something regarding private health insurance. He's actually looking ahead and thinking to a different end game now, because I think you're right. I think he knows that the votes are going to be very difficult to come by. I'm sorry, Rebecca, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say he's shopping different versions of this to CBO right now and trying to get them scored. There's some Ted Cruz version that I assume involves green eggs and ham as a prescription.
That's got to be scary.
Yeah, and just various iterations that he's trying to get scores on. And at this point, I think the best anyone thinks that McConnell can get in terms of uninsured numbers is 18 million, down from 22 million who would lose insurance. So there is no good ending to this, because there was Obamacare, there was the old way, and there's single payer. Obamacare was the middle of the road, and it's imperfect. It has flaws. It's not as cheap as anybody wants it to be. It's not as as expansive as anybody wants it to be. But you can nibble around the edges, but all it does is move pieces around. Yeah.
Well, it is the current system. That's what the GOP and really everybody has to acknowledge. You may not like it. It's clearly not perfect, but it is the system that we have now. And to go back to the previous system, or to go to this idea of like, well, we're going to roll back Medicaid and just kick 30 million people off of insurance, or 22 million, or whatever it is, that's insane. But here's my question for everybody. Suppose, and I don't believe he's going to do this, but suppose McConnell does finally get some kind of a conscience, and he decides to work with Chuck Schumer to cobble together some elements of a fix for the ACA that would actually shore up the system. And suppose they could get 60 or 65 votes for it. Do you guys think that Donald Trump will sign it? I don't think he will, because I think he is such a vindictive, petty person.
Okay.
That I think he might.
First of all, the first problem is okay. Let me actually answer your question before I beat the hell out of it. I think Donald Trump. I think.
I like it when DJ tells other people how they're wrong and not just me. That's
that
my
goes
favorite.
into the More Perfect Union Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump will sign whatever comes to his desk, because if he can sign a bill, then it means it's an accomplishment. He can chalk it up in the win column and he can move on with life. I think that's all he cares about.
Also, he likes signing his name on things.
Oh my God.
However, the problem is I don't think your scenario works. One, because I don't think it's something McConnell is. I don't think it's something that's necessarily McConnell's instincts. The other thing is, among Democrats, I really don't think they know what they want to do in terms of, quote, fixing, unquote, the ACA. I don't think they even know what that means. I don't think they've even really contemplated, except for the folks who are hell-bent for single payer. I think the rest, they obviously have an idea in mind. I don't think the rest of the Democrats have even thought that far ahead. They've been so focused on stopping whatever the Republicans have in mind. I think if McConnell said, okay, this isn't going to work, let's figure out what fixes can we make, I think he'd probably get a bunch of crickets from Senate Democrats, or at the very least to say, you know what, Let me come back to you in about a week when we can actually figure something out. Because outside of the single payer folks, I don't really think Democrats have anything right now.
They do.
I think Democrats have it, but once again, going back, this is McConnell's last ride on the roller coaster. He doesn't care. He does not care. The amounts of you fill in your own blank that he gives is zero. I mean, he doesn't care if anyone likes him. He doesn't care if anyone comes to his birthday party. He doesn't care if anyone cares. So he's not going across the aisle for anything. And if this gets fixed, awesome. If it doesn't get fixed, awesome. Because he doesn't
I disagree.
care.
I think that completely misunderstands. I don't even think that's a word. It does not
misunderstands.
It does not. It does not. You don't comprehend the way Mitch McConnell does think. Mitch McConnell is about getting more Republicans elected to the United States Senate and getting more Republicans elected to Washington. Everything he has done, keeping that Supreme Court seat open for Election Day 2016, ensuring that the most divisive Democrats get all the airtime, like Elizabeth Warren during the Sessions hearing. It is all about tricking, conniving, cajoling more voters into voting Republican than voting Democrat.
But he's not going to cross that aisle.
Well, a rumor I heard in the past week is that Senate Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, are looking at Mitch McConnell right now sort of thinking, dude, what are you doing? Because, his end game is sort of unclear. They don't see a path to any real resolution on this. And normally you can kind of map out what McConnell's doing because he's a very organized thinker. But Schumer's a little unsure of what's going on. Harry Reid could probably figure it out, but he's retired.
I have a question for Kevin. What do you think the Democrats would offer McConnell if he said, "Okay, let's what fixes do the Democrats have in mind?"
Okay, there's a term, Rebecca, you'll be able to pull it out of your head. I'm blanking on it, but there's a term for the insurance companies this was built into the original ACA, and they've since killed it.
The risk corridors.
The risk corridors. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they need to put back the risk corridors. That's one thing.
Right. They have to increase subsidies. Okay. They have to.
Well, they need to change some of the calculus on subsidies altogether.
Right.
The formulas haven't been perfect.
In other words, we're not going to do anything about the underlying healthcare shortage. We're just going to put some band-aids on the insurance market and pretend that will keep us that will move us forward.
Well, since you asked the question to me, DJ, I'll give you the answer you want. Yes,
okay.
That's right.
Well, because the Affordable Care Act always was health insurance reform. It wasn't health care reform.
Right.
And
It wasn't even health. It wasn't even health. It wasn't even health insurance reform. It was health insurance corporatization. It was turning health insurance companies into permanent profit regulated utilities. That's what it was supposed to do. And that's why the health insurance that's why all the health insurers went for it, because they saw guaranteed profits for as far as the eye can see. Let's be honest here. This was corporate health insurance.
No,
that's what it was. That's what it was supposed to do.
But okay. No, the reason that they went for it is because it was going to expand their markets, and because they had no political capital.
They did have political capital. They stopped this in 1994. They went along with it in 2010 because yes, it meant people would be forced to buy their products that they normally wouldn't have, and because with the risk corridor bailout, it ensured that they would always make a profit. So of course they went for it.
Yeah, but that's not corporatization of insurance. Insurance was already corporatized. But anyways, let's move on. Now there's actually a charming little story going on in Ohio. We talk about national news so much, and we miss the really interesting stuff, which is often local politics. Greg, this is your neck of the woods, Ohio. What's happening out there in Loveland?
Oh, so I live in this in this really small town outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I love it. It's called Loveland, Ohio, and it's maybe did I say
Sounds lovable.
It's lovable, and we were actually named after our first post general named like Mark Loveland. That's another story.
Postmaster General, yeah.
Postmaster, yeah. And there's 12,000 people in our town. We have a little city center. I mean, it's really cute town. Bike trail, it's whatnot. But we're having a mayor recall. And what I love about this is that people are getting more energy. There's two parts of the story. That it shows that people are getting more energized, more political. The fact that these things even happening, we're trying to. They're getting votes.
Give us the background. Why is this guy getting recalled?
Oh, and that's the second part, because he is a Republican, and all of a sudden he feels embiggened. Is that a word? Yeah, he feels
emboldened.
It's a Simpsons reference. He feels emboldened. He feels embiggened. So now that he's mayor, he feels like he can cut corners. He's been clearing out meetings. He's like, meetings adjourned. I don't want to hear anything else. They're doing a new city hall, and people are asking for traffic studies, and there's all sorts of parks that are and people are asking for environmental studies. There's new buildings, and people are asking for things that might affect and he's like, look, you guys are standing in the way of progress. I don't want to hear it. No. And so every time people go, and these meetings are packed, and he's like, this is too much. This could be a danger to everybody. Meetings adjourned. Everyone leave. And it's just, and he's doing this repeatedly. So we're like, let's recall the mayor. And it's just amazing and we see this with, we're seeing this more and more with politicians like your Chris Christie and Trump's, where I won, you lost, too bad. That's how this goes. And I don't know if this is a sign of the Trumps, but these little guys feel like really like they got some power, mayor of a 12,000 people town. And so the people are saying, let's recall him. And I love it. I'm really impressed with my local town. And even though we vote like 80% Republican, but once again, I'm so proud to be here.
And with that, we want to thank everybody for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast, and on Facebook at facebook.com/More Perfect Union Podcast, and share our link on your timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And if you think that this debate was fascinating and you'd like to have your own little debates with other fascinating people, please find our political debate group on Facebook. It's called Open Fire, and we're all there. We'd love to see you there too. Everybody, what should we sign off with this week?
I've been working on this chant. I want you guys to finish it. Ready?
Okay.
Mayor Fitzgerald, you must go.
Traffic studies are going too slow.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, okay, that's it.
My Congressman Jamie Raskin, who's a constitutional law professor and apparently a master rapper, came up with a chant that involves the word emoluments. No Trump, no Pence, impeach them for emoluments.